finding the money side of it is definitely the most the most challenging part. A 30 megawatt solar farm, so the sort of minimum size that we build, is 20 million capital expenditure, capex, capital cost.
Okay.
You have to do everything at the beginning.
Yeah.
You have to clean the toilet and go and meet the investor on Pall Mall about lending you a few million quid, and you probably have to do it in the same day. Well, I'm planning to cycle from Bristol to Mallorca.
Wow.
Not including the watery bits, as the comedians amongst my friends point out. I'll be on a ferry for those bits. But so actually, 2 years ago today, actually, I lost my brother to cancer. And Yann was a very keen cyclist. I'm doing it for him and hoping to raise a lot of money for St. Peter's Hospice in Bristol, which was where he was supported towards the end of his life. An amazing, just you can't believe what that place is like, and the staff and what they do day after day is nothing short of miraculous.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Your Tagline here with me, Simon Tomlinson. This is a very special episode of the show for two reasons. Firstly, it is the first episode that has been filmed in the guest's own home, which was in a lovely rural setting near Bath. And secondly, because there's two parts to the episode and two different taglines. In the first half of the podcast, I talked to Owen about his renewable energy business called Climate ER. I find out how he set it up and how he goes about getting investments of £20 million per project. And in the second half of the show, Owen explains why he is about to embark on an epic 1,000-mile bike ride from Bristol to Mallorca in memory of his brother Yann, who sadly passed away 2 years ago to cancer. It's a great episode and I really hope that you enjoy it too. But before we get into the episode, I would just like to mention our sponsor KickLab, which is a digital marketing company based in Birmingham in the UK. KickLab have over 15 years experience and specialise in branding, websites, digital marketing, social media and more. So if you want to grow your business online, just head over to kicklab.com, which is KIKLAB.com. Okay, let's get started with the episode and meet Owen. If you like the episode, then please do make sure you give us a thumbs up and subscribe so you don't miss out on future content. Hello, Owen. Welcome to the podcast. It's good to have you here.
It's good to be here, Simon. In my own living room.
And thank you for allowing us to come down to your living room and film it in your lovely property in the middle of the countryside in Bath. So we're here today to talk about your business, Climate ER. Can you tell me more about it? So what is Climate ER?
Well, Climate ER is a development company developing renewable energy plant, mainly solar farms, and some battery storage. Battery storage is what it says on the tin. So one of the issues with renewable energy is you use it or lose it. You can't turn it on and off. So when the wind's blowing, you're generating a lot of electricity, and when the sun's shining. But if it's not being used, it just gets lost. So one way of balancing the electricity network in the grid is to have big batteries. So, which are basically just like an electric car battery, but in a big storage container, and lots of them.
So with the wind turbines, is it the energy that's taken from those wind turbines that's then stored in the batteries that can then be put into the grid when it's required?
That's right. So if a wind farm was generating a lot of electricity during the night when there's not a lot of demand, then the batteries would soak up the electricity, and then when everybody puts the kettle on in the morning, the electricity get discharged to pop your toast up.
Which sounds like a great thing to do to help us meet the climate change targets that we have in the UK.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the grid, the electricity grid is creaking, really. It's not fit for purpose. It was designed, 30, 40, 50 years ago for big decentralized coal and gas power plants. And what you've got now are lots of little electricity generating stations. You've got a little solar farm, a little wind farm, hydro, biofuel, renewable electricity stations. So yeah, it needs something to balance that grid out.
Yeah, and I think it's great that people like you are helping to take the energy network into the 21st century and into the future, because if we stay the way that we are or have been in the past, then we won't meet those climate change targets that we have.
Yeah, so we deal primarily with onshore power plants, so onshore solar farm, wind farm. The UK does rely heavily on offshore wind, which is a whole other kettle of fish, if you pardon the marine pun. The cost of that and the complication of it, racks up quite considerably. So a lot of the renewable energy in the UK at the moment is coming from offshore wind.
Yeah.
But the cost of that electricity, the cost of generating that electricity is much higher than onshore facilities for fairly obvious reasons. If you've got to put foundations under the sea, on the seabed, 100 meters down, with cables coming in from 30 miles offshore to enormous substations on the coast, the cost of building that is pretty high.
Yeah, but I imagine that there's other challenges that come with building wind farms onshore, because I imagine it's something that local residents don't want in their back garden.
Yeah. I mean, this isn't a political podcast, right? But certainly historically, there's been resistance to onshore, solar farms and wind farms onshore, because by their nature they need to be in the countryside, and you tend to find that the more affluent sections of society live in the countryside, and they don't want their view spoiled, or they don't want a perception that their view is being spoiled.
Yeah. So what is your role in the business? What is it that you do?
I founded the business, so I guess I'm the founder, and you could call me the CEO, but I don't give myself that title. There's only two of us. And I'm the planning, the kind of physical development planning side of the business. So my focus is on finding the right land, developing the right relationships with the landowners, putting together the nuts and bolts of a project so that it has all of the attributes for a successful project. And that's, where solar farms are concerned, is it sunny? Is it relatively cheap or not expensive to build it? So is the terrain, relatively straightforward? Things like access and things like ecology come into play quite a lot, because you're taking what has been a greenfield site, farmers' fields, essentially agricultural fields, and you're putting what is a more industrial use on that land, albeit it's relatively benign. It's not like a wind farm. It's got moving parts, doesn't make any noise. And actually what we tend to find is over time, over sort of 5 or 6 years of a solar farm, you're essentially turning it into a mini nature reserve, because you're taking something that was in relatively intensive agriculture, with lots of pesticides and chemicals and not very biodiverse from a wildlife perspective, and you're effectively fencing it off and letting it do its own thing. And you tend to find actually they become far more biodiverse when they become a solar farm than they were when they were under agriculture. Yeah.
So there's lots of other benefits rather than just generating energy. It's good for the environment and the biodiversity.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you set up the business, how did you go about doing that? Because it sounds like a difficult business to set up in the first place.
Yeah, well, it's an expensive process developing large scale. This is utility scale solar farms, so the kind of projects we work on and that we develop are so utility scale measured in megawatts of electricity, and we develop anything from sort of 30 to 50 megawatt solar farms. So a 30 megawatt solar farm will generate enough electricity in a year to power 7,000 or 8,000 homes, average homes, to give you an idea of the quantum. And obviously a 50 megawatt solar farm is, well over 10,000, 12,000 homes. So it's a lot of electricity.
And how much would one of those farms typically cost to build?
Yeah, so, you're looking at about 20, a 30 megawatt solar farm. So the sort of minimum size that we build is 20 million capital expenditure, capex, capital cost of building that.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah, and I think what I've, when I say it's kind of complicated, it's complicated because there's a lot of money involved. So there are a lot of lenders involved, the investors. If you're going to invest £20 million in something, your lawyers are going to crawl all over it. And everything that we do has to be kind of squeaky clean in terms of due diligence and to stand up to scrutiny from the investors.
Okay, and it was a question that I was going to ask you was about how do you get the funding? So you get that funding from investors, but what kind of investors would they typically be?
Two kinds really. Typically, you've got the other larger renewable energy companies. So we did talk to Shell recently, who were looking to invest in the UK. So there are very big players in the energy market, but they don't particularly know the intricacies of the UK market, and they don't know the intricacies of the UK renewable energy market. So they bring the money, and we bring the expertise, and you put the two together to generate the projects. Or it tends to be private equity finance from capital investment houses. The ultimate owners of solar farms and all renewable energy facilities tend to be pension funds, because it's a very stable asset with a stable income that you can predict and forecast over a period of time. They have a set lifetime of 35 or 40 years, and that brings a set return, and it's a nice stable investment for pension funds, with 7 or 8% return, something like that.
Okay, and once it's connected to the grid, then the company who's providing you with the income is a very stable company that's going to be able to do that. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, I mean there are two parts to the development process. One is the early development, so getting the planning permission. That's what adds the value to the project, is putting all those pieces together that I talked about before. The land and the various nuts and bolts of the planning process. And then the big jump in value of the project is when it gains planning permission. And then obviously it jumps again in value once it's been built and is generating electricity.
So what would you say have been the biggest challenges getting the business set up in the first place and getting it to a point where it's generating income?
Finding the money side of it is definitely the most the most challenging part, or I should say probably finding an investment structure that is attractive for us. There's quite a lot of investment capital available, and increasingly so now, with net zero targets, legally binding targets. There's a lot of activity in the market, but as with any investment, it's the return on their investment and whether that's attractive for us in terms of what they take, the slice of the pie that the investor takes and what's left for us. So that's kind of constantly changing, really. We're always talking to different investors about different structures to that investment.
Yeah, and it sounds like there must be a lot of work there, because you said that it's only 2 people in the company.
Yeah.
So to try and get all of that investment coming in, and also to manage the projects as well.
Yeah.
That's a lot of work that you have to manage between 2 people.
Yeah, well, that's a very astute observation, Simon.
So you must be a busy man, Owen.
And very accurate. I think because we're quite a young company, the company was formed 2.5 years ago. Terence, my business partner, and I, we've both been in the industry for much longer, but the company itself was formed relatively recently. So I think there's been a lot of focus on that investment piece and getting the right investment deal. And I think we're getting there. I think hopefully in the next couple of months we'll have, a really good deal signed. That then means that will take a lot of pressure off and release a lot of capacity in the business to actually go out and do the development. But yeah, certainly in the early stages, and I'm sure you've had lots of other people who run their own business saying that you have to do everything at the beginning.
Yeah,
you have to clean the toilet and go and meet the investor on pall mall about lending you a few million quid, and you probably have to do it in the same day.
And especially at the start of setting up a business, then there are so many things to do, and there's also a lot of pressure, both financially and in terms of trying to make it work and trying to bring that money in. What would you say the biggest lessons are that you've learned, that if there's anyone looking to set up their own business where they need to get investment for whatever it might be, are there any lessons that you've learned that other people might be able to take on?
It's difficult. I remember getting the same advice, and it's difficult to take it at the beginning to sort of believe it. But I remember people saying to me when we were starting out, just be confident. You know more than you think you know, and you're more capable than you think you are. It's difficult when you're at the beginning because you don't feel that, but absolutely, that advice rings true. I think from an investment perspective, in the kind of investment arena that we're working in, I've definitely learned that contracts and the legal side of things is really important, and having a good lawyer on your side is you can't go into big investment transactions and try and do it yourself. I think we tried to do that and sort of do it on a shoestring, and we've learned through painful experience through one of the contracts is only takes a couple of words out of place in a particular clause of a 48-page contract, and those 2 words have literally meant the difference between £500,000 and not.
Oh wow.
In the business. So that's quite a painful lesson. That's quite a painful lesson to learn. But I think the attention to detail and having the right, it might not be lawyers, but definitely having the right advice in the business. And I think because we're only a 2-person business, we have struggled a bit sometimes to reach sort of mutual decisions, because you've only got one other person to bounce off.
Okay.
And if you both have a difference of opinion, there's no casting vote, there's nobody else. So I think we're looking at perhaps getting a non-executive director type person to sit in the middle and resolve some of those issues when we have them. Thankfully, it doesn't come up very often. We generally agree, but when we don't, it's difficult.
Yeah, and I know that you've worked in the renewable energy industry for a long time. Do you think that you could have set up this business if you didn't have that previous history working in the industry?
No, because it's pretty. I'm sure everybody says this about their own sector and their own industry, right? But it is It's pretty niche. I don't think it's probably not possible to do that. No, and I mean you could bring one half of the expertise. You bring the money or the development expertise, but to put it all together, I think you do have to have that experience.
Yeah, and I'm sure that there's some businesses where you don't necessarily need to have that much experience, but with yours, it sounds like you absolutely do. And I think with any kind of business, it definitely helps if you've got experience in whatever that industry is.
Yeah, it would just be bloody hard work, I think, if you didn't. So yeah, I'd recommend anybody thinking about doing renewable energy development who doesn't know anything about it, probably don't do that.
So what are your plans for the future with Climate ER?
Well, like I say, hopefully we are signing an investment deal in the next sort of few months, and that will give us, that's a 2 or 3 year deal basically. So that will give us development capital to kind of put all the company development stuff to bed for a little while, and just get on with the day job of actually developing the projects. So we got a fairly ambitious target of kind of developing around 10 projects a year. Okay. over that 2 or 3 year period, which in terms of megawatts is anything between sort of 800 megawatts and 1,000 megawatts.
Okay.
1,000 megawatts being a gigawatt. So yeah, it's kind of it's exciting times. It's a bit daunting, but yeah.
Yeah, well, it sounds great that you've got so many projects on the go and such big plans for the future. And I also think it's great for the environment that there are businesses like this which are actually trying to make a difference.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah.
Is there anything else that you think that the UK could be doing to help us to meet the climate change targets in the future?
Yeah, well, obviously banning plastic straws is a very important part. No, I'm joking. That's a running joke between us, isn't it? So,
yeah.
Don't start me on banning plastic straws. I think, I mean, it's not the right time to be talking about government investment, right? But the some of the real barriers to going fully net zero quicker are around things like the electricity grid, the pylons and the overhead lines that you see are just and the way that's split up into the electricity distribution network, it just doesn't work for lots of little electricity generating stations. Like I said before, it's designed for Drax coal-fired power station over there and a massive one over there, and it's all pumped across in massive high voltage pylons, but it's not designed. So the nuts and bolts of that are that it's very expensive for companies like us to connect what is a relatively small solar farm into that network, because it generally requires a lot of work to the network to be able to do that.
Okay.
And at the moment, government don't put any of that money into upgrading the network. All of that is passed on to the private developer. So it's, we could be accelerating that a lot quicker if there was more government investment in that.
Yeah, it sounds like there are some big changes that need to happen to the way that we manage the energy networks in the UK.
Yeah, I mean, it is a massive challenge, and even the kind of electricity renewable energy boffins, I think, probably accept that there's no silver bullet, because what's happening is that electricity demand is going up at the same time as we need to reduce carbon emissions and decarbonize. We're just using more and more electricity for partly as part of the decarbonisation agenda, but also just as a society.
Yeah, so I think there's lots of things that the government can do. There's lots of things that businesses can do, but there's also lots of things that individuals can do as well. So now, Owen, I want to talk to you about something different, because I've heard on the grapevine that you're doing an epic bike ride for charity. So can you tell me what it is that you're doing?
Yes. Well, it's very kind of you to ask, Simon. The grapevine is noisy. Yeah, so I'm planning to cycle from Bristol to Mallorca.
Wow.
Not including the watery bits, as the comedians amongst my friends point out. I'll be on a ferry for those bits. But so actually, well, two years ago today, actually, I lost my brother to cancer, and Yann was a very keen cyclist, and he loved. His favourite place to go cycling was Mallorca, so he would he'd take his bike over or hire a bike, and he'd cycle up the mountains. There's some quite. I've never been a biker really. I think before I started training for this epic trip, the furthest I'd ridden was 20 minutes to Tesco's and back to get a pack of donuts, probably. So, but there are some fairly well-known passes and mountain passes in Mallorca that are sort of cycling meccas. And he actually built a bike. He built his own bikes for his cycling endeavours, and he built a bike that he was going to undertake the same trip on, and he never got to do that. So I'm doing it for him and hoping to raise a lot of money for St. Peter's Hospice in Bristol, which was where he was supported towards the end of his life. An amazing, just you can't believe what that place is like, and the staff and what they do day after day is nothing short of miraculous. So splitting the money between St. Peter's Hospice in Bristol and Cancer Research UK. So it's 1,200 miles, maybe 1,300, depending on which route I take.
Over how many days?
Well, that depends how many miles I can cycle a day.
How many miles do you think that you will be able to cycle?
Well, I think in the first week I'm going to not push myself too hard, because everybody tells me I'm not quite ready. And
when is it that you leave?
Middle of September.
Okay.
With a view to arriving. So
about a month left to go. Just over.
Yeah, for about 5 weeks.
Okay.
About 5 weeks. But it's going to be all over social media, so everybody will get to see it.
And have you got your Twitter and your Instagram handles? Do you know what they are?
Yeah, so it's Ride for Yann.
Okay.
Or R4Y, R numeral 4Y. Hashtag R4Y. Okay. For the kids, which is something I'm learning all about, and which you're kindly helping me with.
Yeah, so I'm going to give you a social media lesson.
Yeah, great.
Well, I think it's a truly amazing thing that you're doing. It's a massive challenge, and I know that you've been putting a lot of work in on the Peloton bike, which is just over there.
Yes.
Putting in the miles.
I spend many a sweaty evening with Jess King from Peloton.
I'm sure that you will achieve it, and I hope that you raise loads of money in the process for what are really, really good causes that can help a lot of people in the future. I think it's an amazing thing, and good luck with doing it. And I look forward to keeping up with the progress. So I will be following you and checking up on how you're doing.
Amazing.
I look forward to seeing.
I'm sure there'll be some minor calamities and comedy moments and dramatic moments, but it'll be a very interesting trip for sure.
Well, thank you, Owen, for being on the podcast.
Thank you.
Final question is, what is your tagline?
What is my tagline
for this episode? And can we have 2 taglines, actually?
Yeah.
I didn't prepare you with this. I would like one tagline for the renewable energy industry work that you do.
Yeah.
And one tagline for the bike ride.
For the bike ride. Yeah, okay. Well, the renewable energy one's easy.
Yeah.
So that's developing energy that won't cost the earth.
Nice. I like it.
Yeah, works every way. And, well, yeah, tagline for the bike ride.
Well, it could be Ride for Yann.
Yeah. Yeah, ride for Yann, I think.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well,
it's I'm embodying his spirit, so, so yeah, that's very fitting, I think. Yeah. Ride for Yann.
Definitely. Yeah. And this is the first time I've ever let anyone have 2 taglines.
Okay, well, I feel incredibly privileged, Simon. Thank you.
Thank you so much for allowing us to film the podcast in your wonderful home in the lovely countryside in Bath. And thanks for sharing your story about the renewable energy industry, but also the charity work that you're doing as well.
Thank you. You're very welcome. It's been a pleasure.
I hope you enjoyed that episode with Owen. Next week, we'll be speaking with Eamon, who runs a customer marketing business called Hive. To make sure you don't miss out on this episode and all future content, just make sure you subscribe to the channel, and I will see you next time.